Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today I want to talk about the lack of a campaign story experience in Battlefield 2042 and, well, what that means for the franchise in the bigger picture. And hopefully we can, as objectively as possible, try to answer the question of, should Battlefield games continue to develop single-player components or just go exclusively multiplayer? Now, I think the best way to delve into this subject matter is to look at the history of the Battlefield franchise. The first two Battlefield games, 1942 and Vietnam, didn't have campaign experiences. Battlefield was built as and marketed as a multiplayer experience only from the start, and the Battlefield campaigns didn't start showing up until the game started getting ported to console. There was a problem at the time where the PC side of Battlefield could support 64 players and all this crazy multiplayer experience, where the consoles at the time, being the Xbox and the PlayStation 2, could only handle a maximum of 24 players. So the first campaign experience with Battlefield 2 Modern Combat was more or less there to supplement the, well, lack of multiplayer when compared to the PC side of things. And they continued the console campaign tradition with Bad Company in 2008. And this was the first time that I would say Battlefield made a full-fledged campaign experience with higher production quality and a much longer experience. And it's important to remember that at this time, COD was dominating the market. I mean, they still are dominating the market, but that's when they had really stepped up their game with COD 4 Modern Warfare. That game had transformed the shooter market forever. AAA developers often had to follow in the footsteps of COD because investors wouldn't back projects unless they were somehow copying Call of Duty's successful formula. And while I can't say for a fact that COD is the reason why Battlefield started integrating single-player components, I can say that COD was probably the driving force behind this decision. And frankly, Bad Company sold much better than the previous game in the franchise, 2142, which didn't include a single player. Bad Company 2 continued the tradition with the single player and became the best-selling Battlefield game at its time. Of course, it helped that it was also the first Battlefield game to be available on consoles and PC, and from there on, all major Battlefield releases had a single-player experience. Now, there is no question in my mind that adding a single-player component to a Battlefield game increases its total sales potential. Lots of people buy games mainly for a single-player experience, and the multiplayer is just the bonus after that. It also provides a lot of juicy marketing clips to better sell the game concept. Battlefield 1's reveal trailer, for example, made great use of its single player for marketing purposes. And that game was the best-selling Battlefield game of all time. The cutscenes used in the trailer really intrigued me, and they made you want to learn more about the crazy events that were taking place. There was also a very emotional undertone and focus on the stories of the characters in the game. And to be honest, I think the Battlefield 1 marketing experience would have been very different without single-player clips to pull from. I think the game still would have done well, and it could have still been a very cool trailer, but it would have been a different tone. So the question is, why exclude a feature that would boost your sales and improve your marketing potential? Well, one of the main reasons is development cost. Single players are expensive AF, often significantly more expensive than the multiplayer components. There's more unique assets required, tons more level design, script writing, voice acting, animations, cutscenes. The cost can go through the roof. Not to mention the multiplayer and single player experiences are developed in parallel, usually by separate teams, and they can slow each other down. If one team is waiting on resources being developed by the other, or a bug that one team needs to fix for the other to move forward, it complicates the development process greatly. So while it's easy to say that Battlefield 2042 would just be better if it had a campaign component, well, if it did have one, would that also mean that we would have gotten the game a year later? Would it be more buggy at launch? And would certain multiplayer design elements be compromised? There's a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions that most of us would really never know about or understand how one might affect the other. And I do full-heartedly believe that focusing exclusively on multiplayer will result in a more pure multiplayer experience. So for people only interested or mainly interested in that aspect of Battlefield, then I think removing the campaign will ultimately benefit your gameplay experience. And if Battlefield 2042 was given a similar budget to previous titles, but now all of that budget can be used exclusively for multiplayer components, then you should expect to see a lot more multiplayer content, which is frankly exactly exactly what we have been seeing so far. 13 maps at launch, not including whatever comes with Hazard Zone. The whole game is built at a new massive scale, bigger features, Portal, which is like a completely self-contained game in itself with entire genres of vehicles and weapons, and then some sort of Battlefield Battle Royale, but not Battle Royale component. I think realistically, if 2042 had a single player component, well, we probably wouldn't be seeing Portal as a new addition to the game. Now, to some of you, you may prefer campaign over the Portal experience, but for me, if I had to choose, it would be Portal 100%. Now, I think it's also important to look at the role that a campaign has played in Battlefield games. Battlefield campaigns have never been as elaborate as Call of Duty games, and without trying to slam them too much, well, to be honest, they've been pretty darn boring. I've never played any of them more than once unless I needed to do something for an assignment. The AI and gameplay strategy has always been really boilerplate, not innovative in the slightest. It's certainly not a Crisis experience or Half-Life where everything is meticulously crafted from the ground up to engage you in an epic adventure. It's mostly just been a showcase of assets from multiplayer in a just mediocre single player. And by comparison, I vividly remember elements from Call of Duty campaigns because so much more money and effort was put into them. But Battlefield's campaigns have had very few standout moments that were able to carve out a niche in my gaming memory. So with all that said, I think EA is taking a gamble by not including a single player experience, but if I'm being totally honest, I hope that this gamble pays off and reminds them that they don't have to follow in Call of Duty's footsteps. And I say that despite them copying the operator classes concept, of course, but breaking away from the AAA game formula and doing what Battlefield first set out to do with Battlefield 1942, which was blow your mind with a cutting-edge multiplayer shooter experience. And so far, it looks like that's exactly what they're going to do with 2042. And again, of course, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes info here that we just can't know about. Budgeting, timelines, future plans for the franchise, etc. But we do know that projects like this have a finite budget from the start, and if all of those resources are put into making the best possible multiplayer experience, well, then that's a good thing in my book. And really only time will tell if this is the right decision for the franchise. But nonetheless, I'd like to give DICE a pat on the back for doing what they want and taking a risk. It's certainly what has set this shooter apart from its competitors in the past, not being afraid to take risks. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think it's the right decision for DICE to exclude a single player from 2042? Do you want them to exclude single players from all future Battlefield titles if it works really well for 2042? And has the exclusion of a single player changed your decision as to whether or not you would be buying this game? As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.